MP3 or an audio file recording of a mechanical shutter moving up and down. Yeah, that's the sound that the camera makes. If you did not have the phone on silent mode, this is the sound that the phone would make. Why are these phones making this sound?
It's more for usability, called the theory of affordances, where we want to relate to things that we know, and this gives you an acknowledgement that it has been clicked.
So that's the first answer, that it's a usability feature. If people get to hear sounds that they're used to, they think they're using familiar technology.
As a caution to people around, if I kind of take their photos without their knowledge, if they hear the click sound, they at least can turn around and see who's clicking it.
Did you hear that response? As a notification. As a notification to the person whose photograph I might be taking. The history of this is in Japan and Korea. In Japan and Korea, when camera phones became very popular, there was a new type of pornography, actually quite a terrible form of pornography, that became popular. That type of pornography was called upskirt photography. So people would wait for women near staircases and escalators, and then hold the phone under the woman's skirt and take a photograph. And the law in Korea first, and later in Japan, said that cameras should make this sound, and the sound should be of such and such decibel, and it should be illegal for the manufacturer to allow the user to turn the sound off. So the silent feature that you are able to use in India is an illegal feature in Japan and Korea. If the manufacturer makes the phone in such a manner that the phone can not make this sound, then that manufacturer will be held liable for making a privacy infringing technology. Okay? So this is a quick introduction to the first privacy principle, that notice when personal information of somebody is being collected, then notice must be provided. You must notify the person that you're collecting personal information about him or her. So this is considered a privacy principle. Privacy law across the world tries to implement this principle. This is one of the 9 principles that privacy law across the world tries to implement. The second thing that we learned from this case study is technology can be potentially privacy infringing, and then law is required to ensure that privacy infringing technology is regulated. And the law, the legal measure may result in a technological measure. So it starts off with the law, and it ends up being a feature, an unnecessary feature perhaps, on the device that you're using. And the internet, of course, makes the privacy infringing capacity of a mobile phone much more complicated, because you can upload it onto the internet. So we'll move on and let Elonnai tell you a story, and then we discuss that story and come back to a next story.
Hello? Okay, so perhaps talking about a physical feature which relates to privacy. How many people here have used a cyber cafe? Okay, does someone want to describe their experience using that cyber cafe, and try to include your physical surroundings when you explain? Oh. So can you explain your experience using the cyber cafe and pay attention to the physical experience of using that cyber cafe?
Cyber cafe, using a cyber cafe is quite an uncomfortable experience, because we have very small cubicles, and they're hot and muggy. Yeah, and many times they are slow than what the speed is claimed. maybe, you know, because too many users in. And privacy is an issue. And there is no control over what others are doing. So there'll be a youngster playing music or, you know.
And why do you feel like privacy is an issue?
Because people are hanging around all over the place. And you don't know who's snooping, who's not. Yeah. And another point, I never use a cyber cafe if I have to deal with bank accounts, or if even if I have to book a railway ticket, because that involves using your credit card or debit card, whatever. And cyber cafes are not secure. Your bankers call you often and tell you don't use cyber cafes for that.
Okay. Perfect. So you mentioned two things that I was looking for. One, you talked about the cubicles being small, and then you also talked about there being a lack of privacy. So in 2011, the government of India notified the cyber cafe rules under the IT Act, and as part of these requirements, the government has required that cyber cafes only build their cubicles to 4.5 feet tall, and all computers have to be facing out. They can't be facing inward. And we think the rationale of this was that before individuals were perhaps doing inappropriate behavior, and so the government said that the cubicles have to be shorter and everything has to be visible. Now, interestingly, in 2013, a parliamentary committee submitted comments on the 2011 cyber cafe rules, and they noted that the computers facing out could invade the privacy of individuals. Using the cyber cafe as what is on your screen is open to everybody. They also noted that the requirements found in the cyber cafe rules in terms of the documentation that cyber cafes have to keep could have an adverse effect on internet penetration in India. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but when you go to a cyber cafe, you have to first, when you go, register with a form of identification. I'm sure we've all experienced this. And that log register is kept for 1 year by the cyber cafe. And then when you use and in addition to sending in or submitting your identification, they might also collect certain details, like your name, your address, perhaps your gender. So all of this information is stored in a log register, which is then submitted every 5 months to a supervising authority. And then, in addition to that, all your activity on the computer, along with the proxies installed on that computer, is recorded and stored for another year. Now, what we found concerning about this is that for law enforcement or other agencies to access this information, all they have to do is submit a written request to the cyber cafe owner, and he has to provide the documentation and any other type of assistance needed. And not only that, but also you have cyber cafe owners now holding and retaining your personal information and your user activity. So I think that's my short story about how cyber cafes can be privacy invading, both on a physical level and on what type of information they retain about you and your activities.
So quick recap of the cyber cafe story. When you enter the cyber cafe, there is a know your customer requirement of registration, and the rules say that the cyber cafe owner must take a photograph of you using his or her camera. So that's part of the KYC, know your customer requirements. The second layer to the problem is data retention. The cyber cafe is keeping your browser history, your internet usage logs for 1 year. So that could have privacy concerns. And then the limit on the partition, that the partition should be only 4.5 feet, is basically meant to prevent men from using cyber cafes for adult activities or to consume adult content. That is the reason why that policy is in place. But what it prevents you from doing is it prevents you from entering your bank details. The very same regulation which on the one hand is trying to keep the cyber cafe safe for women and families is interfering with the cyber cafe's usage as a serious place for e-commerce. So these are the three elements in that story. Just to add to Elonnai's story, some old woman who went to a cyber cafe and gave all her documents as KYC later realized that some telecom salesman using the same KYC got 60 SIM cards issued in her name. So KYC, know your customer, is not as simple as we think it is, because the same documents, if they are in the wrong hands, can be abused for some other purpose. So now I will tell you two stories, and these are full of blood, unfortunately. But let's see what we can learn from these two stories. And we are moving away from cyber cafes and we are thinking about the telephone networks. And most of the internet traffic, increasingly, internet traffic will be on telephone networks. So there's a young man from Infosys who wakes his wife up one morning and says, I have a surprise present for you. Then he ties her eyes shut with a band and he pulls out a knife and he slits her throat. Then he takes her mobile phone and puts it into one pocket, and he puts his mobile phone in the other pocket and goes out with his friend jogging. He goes out with this friend every day at the same time to jog. When he is jogging, he uses his wife's phone in his left pocket to call his phone in his right pocket, and then he pretends to have a conversation with his wife, wherein some people, dangerous people, are standing outside their home. Then he rushes back to the home with his friend, and they both discover the dead body of the wife. Okay, this is story number one. Story number two, there is a jeweler who comes from Hyderabad, and he's got a suitcase full of money and jewelry, and he rents a taxi driver in Bangalore for a period of a week because there is a big jewelry expo. Yeah. So the taxi driver notices that the jeweler has so much money and jewelry in his suitcase. So the taxi driver plots with other taxi drivers and they come up with a plan. On the final day, before the jeweler leaves the hotel, the taxi driver gets the jeweler to sign on the bill, saying that when we reach the airport, it will be very busy there. Then the taxi driver stops the vehicle halfway down airport road, and the other taxi drivers come. They catch the jeweler, put him into the second vehicle, take him to some place, kill him, and take the jewelry. But they make sure that his phone is still in the first taxi. Then this taxi driver takes the phone all the way to the airport, and he makes sure that he parks his vehicle where there is no CCTV, and then returns, throws the phone into a dustbin in the airport, and then returns back home. So from these two stories, what do we know? Both were caught. The police managed to catch both the criminals in both these stories. In both stories, the criminals were caught, which is why there has to be some reasonable limits on our privacy to keep us safe. Privacy cannot be an absolute right. Just like Pranesh told us yesterday, free speech is not an absolute right. Privacy is also not an absolute right. Under certain circumstances, such as the two stories I have told you about, we can't allow for absolute privacy. So how did the police find out what happened in both stories?
According, when this whole issue of mobility came up, they also put in security features into the architecture. And every conversation that you have on a mobile phone is stored for 5 years. So in the first story, he may have convinced his friend that he's talking to his wife, but when the police look, they would have noticed that the other phone wasn't picked up and there was no conversation from the other side. Second, the police would have asked if the person is dead in some location and this phone is in this dustbin here, so it doesn't make sense. The phone should have been on his...
Okay, that's two explanations. Anybody has any other explanation of how the police found out?
First one, since you said he called from his wife's phone,
yes.
Maybe they traced the tower or the cell where both the phones were in the same place. Or
yes, that is the correct answer to the first question. So what you said is that they have comprehensive data retention. And you're making the argument that for 5 years, the full audio recording of our phone conversations are being stored by the government. I think some people in the government would like that to be the case, but today it is very expensive to store so much data. So that type of data is stored selectively for certain classes of phone numbers. It is not stored for every single Infosys engineer and their wife. So the police don't have that data today. Tomorrow they might, but today voice recordings of every single phone call in the country is not available to the police. Your answer says that they realize that they are both talking from the same cell or the same geographical location. Even if you don't have geographical positioning systems enabled in your cell phone, even if there is no GPS chip in your phone and it is not turned on and not locked on to a satellite, even in that case, the police can approximately tell, not from the full voice record, but from the cell, the call database. They have a database of call records. From that database, they will be able to tell by comparing the signal strength to the 3 towers closest to you, they'll be able to roughly tell where you were at that particular time. So with the Infosys engineer, this is how they were able to say that the engineer was holding both phones during the time of the phone call. So the engineer knew about the fact that they were storing data, and he knew about the time. And he was hoping that the sequence at which things happen, so he was hoping that the police knew that his wife called him during that time, and he was hoping to clear himself using that piece of evidence. But he did not know about the GPS data or the cell tower data. The taxi driver was smarter than the Infosys engineer. The taxi driver also knew about the GPS data or the cell tower data. That's why the taxi driver took the phone all the way to the airport, but then made another mistake, which is the phone was not found with the body. The body was found somewhere else. But in this case, the taxi driver was arrested because of the pattern of calls. So even from just call record data, who called whom, where, for how long, even from that data, if it is not typical, if you've been calling your other partners once a month, and suddenly over this week you call them 20 times, that will throw off a signal. So it is the change in pattern. If you call somebody every day once, but on a particular day you call them 20 times, then the police are going to want to know why. Going back to the Osama bin Laden compound, such a big building in such a posh neighborhood, no cell phones in that building. So the absence of data is also a pattern. So that should have alerted the Pakistani intelligence. How come in a building as big as that, nobody ever uses the phone in that building. That should also turn, so increasingly intelligence agencies and the police can look at data in these ways. Over to Elonnai. Oh, I'm using double mic.
So as a quick note on the data retention that you were talking about, currently data retention requirements for service providers are found in the ISP license and the UAS license. And when we RTI'd BSNL and MTNL to ask about their data retention practices, we actually got different answers, which was a bit surprising for us. One said that they store CDRs for 1 year, and one said that they store CDRs for 3 years. So right now, I would say that data retention practices in India are unclear. There seem to be different practices, and we only know about what's happening in public ISPs. We don't know what the private ISPs are following. Now, to kind of take off of the whole telephone tapping and intelligence, who has been following the NSA scandal in the US? Okay, so do you want to maybe say quickly what the NSA scandal is about and what's been happening?
People who knew about this thing knew this was happening for a long time. This is nothing new. It's just looking at how much of that is getting disclosed publicly at this time. But if you're not following it, recently NSA, which is the spying agency in the US for foreign, is a signals intelligence agency. It basically means that it intercepts and listens to foreign intelligence stuff and all your internet traffic, over time. It was revealed that they were collecting data from Google, Facebook, and a bunch of other internet companies, unfettered in the US. And they were also collecting call data records from Verizon, which is basically who's calling whom and all of that kind of data in a massive scale. As I said, this is something that everybody has known for a while. There's nothing new in it. It's just that how much is getting disclosed at this point.
Okay, great, thanks. So it's been out in the Indian news that the central monitoring system, which is coming out in India, is the equivalent to the NSA practices in the US. And the central monitoring system is basically a system that is looking to bypass service providers and allow the government to intercept, monitor, trace, analyze internet content. Now, under the current regime, how, let's say interception happens, is a police officer or a governmental agency has to send a request to the Secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs, and that request has to be approved, and then that request is sent to a nodal officer and a service provider, and the service provider will then start the interception. And so the system is looking to completely take the service provider out of the picture and allow the central government agencies to do interception on their own. Now, I think this is a really complicated system that they're looking at on a bunch of different levels. One, it seems that this type of system would allow proactive monitoring, right, or proactive analysis. If they no longer have to go through the service provider, do they still need to get a request approved from the Secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs? That seems unclear to me. Also, it's not clear if they are, whoops, sorry, just lost my train of thought. So if they are bypassing the service provider, which follows one set of rules, there's actually 3 sets of rules for like interception. Interception is one thing. Then under the IT, there is rules for tracking and collecting traffic data, which is different from a real-time interception, right? So traffic data might be data at rest, it might be collecting that data, whereas interception is a real-time collection or listening into your phone call. So if you have requirements for interception, then you have requirements for collection of data, and then you also have security requirements for that are found in the ISP license that service providers have to comply with. And it seems that the CMS is going to bypass all of these, so our question is, under what legal grounding will the CMS be functioning? Now, we don't know too much about the CMS, but we did find a tender from the Assam, the state of Assam, which is looking to put in place an internet monitoring system, which is similar to the it seems to be similar to the CMS, where essentially the government is putting in collection servers as service providers, and information is then routed to the government, where they can then track and analyze all of your internet content. So I think, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Satyan Gupta from Delhi. I just want to add 2-3, additional information to what you have mentioned. Basically, these lawful interception of a information on a telecom network in India, it is governed by what is called LIM. LIM is the technology or the platform, lawful interception and monitoring. Now, this LIM is actually of two different types. For voice or for the telecom part, it is totally different, and for internet, it is totally different. Now, as far as the CMS is concerned, the centralized monitoring system is concerned, for the time being, it is planned only for voice, not for internet. It will not do what you mentioned about internet. Today also, all these LIA, Lawful Enforcement Agency, 9 of them are there, they can tap or record or listen into only the voice conversation, not the internet traffic. For the internet traffic, there is a different setup which is almost non-functional. Even if you want to do it, you cannot do it. Because what happens, as for the ISP license itself, the requirement of lawful interception or that assistance to the lawful agency is different than what is for the voice, which is mentioned in USL license. For the internet, what is the arrangement is that they have to pay a fees to a government agency called CDOT, Center for Development of Telematics, and that CDOT then actually design a system for lawful interception for the ISP. So ISP per se has to do nothing in its network. He just have to give some royalty payment to the CDOT and then also give access to the CDOT server. And CDOT is trying to build a server for doing the lawful interception for the internet, which has not been implemented. For last 10 years it is going on. As for the requirement of the license, the ISPs have done their job, just giving the contract to CDOT, paying a royalty on the annual basis to them, and giving the access to their network to CDOT if they want. But CDOT itself is not ready except for few big ISPs. He has done trial. So both are different that way. As far as CMS is concerned, it will be taking care of only the voice part, not the internet. So internet is far away. The internet interception of the internet traffic in India today also it is not there, and with CMS also it is not there. It's far away. So both are totally different. So that is what I wanted to bring to the table.
So,
and also one more thing about this Assam thing, that is totally wrong. Actually, the CMS is the liability of the central government, and this interception can happen only with the approval of, as you have mentioned, with the Home Secretary, and hence a state government of their own cannot do what they are trying to do as per your information. So it will be totally illegal, and in any case, what they may do at the most is for their state government network.
yes.
But these public network, whether internet or telecom, they are not allowed to do. And in that law change, as you mentioned, that now government through the CMS is trying to bypass the operator. That is correct, but now they are trying to change a rule under which they do these interception. There is a rule under the Indian Telegraph Act. That rule is, I think, 119A or B. I read in the paper. So in the rule, so when I asked with the concerned officer that what you are doing in that rule, they told we are doing nothing except we are, in addition to manual, we are also writing automatic so that we can do it automatic and hence bypass the operator. That is correct. Bypassing the operator will happen, but it will not dilute the process in any other manner. The approval of the Home Secretary will still be required. That precaution they are taking. So only thing is they are, instead of keeping it manual, they are automating it. And for that also they have to change a rule. And last week the law ministry told them it is not only rule change alone is not enough. Maybe you have to go to the parliament to change the act to implement that. And that is where they are stuck. That is why CMS is just under trial in Delhi, which have not, it's far away before they get the legal, approvals, law change, and then also it will be only for voice, and it will bypass the operator, yes, but not the process. The process has to be followed.
What Elonnai has shared with you is what we have managed to collect from newspapers and other press releases as the source. So we have been investigating large infrastructure, the UID project, the NatGrid project, and the CMS using news as our primary research methodology. Sometimes we speak to people who say they know about these things, expert interviews, but mostly we are focusing on news. What Satyan Gupta is saying is based on his inside knowledge, because he was previously with the regulator's office, TRAI, here in India, and now gives advice to some of the biggest telecoms that operate in the country. People are always running to him for their advice. So he's giving us some inside knowledge. But all I can say, after hearing these two different versions of the story, is it's not clear. And when the government is working on such critical projects, it will be very useful to have as much information about these projects in the public domain, so that we are not listening to multiple versions of the story. Because the press, every time they have a CMS story, they say all sorts of things, and many of them may be untrue. Now, coming to some of the issues that Satyan raised, as he explained. There is a due process. Elonnai also told you about this process. This process can happen either at the central government or at the state government, but in both cases, the Secretary of Home has to approve the interception order, has to approve the order that allows for legal interception. Yeah, this is what he has said. And what Mr. Gupta assures us is there is going to be no dilution of the process. What we are afraid of is as the volumes increase, there may be. So we got a count of the existing interception orders. So at any given point in time, India is not under very heavy surveillance. About 10,000 phone lines are being intercepted at any given point in time. This is the volume. Yeah? These authorizations have to be renewed every 3 months. Every 3 months, the authorization has to be renewed. So roughly the load is 10,000 for a quarter. So we then try to estimate, because what the Home Secretary has to do, this is at the central level, 10,000 at the central level. At the state level, the data is not available. The Home Secretary has to look at the request, yeah? Has to read the reasons provided by the police, and then decide whether those reasons fall under the reasonable restrictions, the restrictions or exceptions to the right to privacy. This is what he has to come to a determination. Yeah? Now, if the Home Secretary, apart from everything else that he or she has to do, has to also approve 10,000 interception orders every quarter, that is a lot. And we estimate maybe they have about 5 minutes for each order? In which case, are they truly applying their mind? This is a question that can be asked. So a good privacy enabling legal framework will ensure that not only that there is a good process, but practically also it is possible for the person who has been empowered to carry out this task. So that's one thing I wanted to say about the process. But you all have some sense of how the process works. It is using provisions within the Telegraph Act or provisions under the IT Act, and in both cases Home Secretary has to be, the permission has to be gotten from the Home Secretary, either at the central level or the state level. In emergency cases, the officer in charge of a police station can approve for 3 days. You can do interception for 3 days. And if the interception has to be continued beyond 3 days, then Home Secretary approval is necessary again. So there is an emergency protocol as well. Yeah, even for, yes, please explain that.
Basically what happens is in emergency, yes, the police officer can decide and order a service provider to give the access to some of the security agencies, but within 3 days he has to produce the approval of the Home Secretary. And if it does not come, then a action can be taken against the police officer. The service provider himself can go to a tribunal and tell that they have home illegally to provide this legal interception. Because if the Home Secretary approval does not come, then the interception becomes illegal. It's lawful only if it is approved by Home Secretary.
Okay. Is this all clear so far? Shall we move on to another story, which is, yes, yes, yes. We have many telecom experts here. So,
in that context of that NSA survey report, basically they are supposed to only look after data from non-American, like outside of the US. The interesting fact is that India is number 6 on the list of countries that they have been looking for. So, something to talk about.
no, so let me tell you the Blackberry story, and then you'll tell maybe maybe you can tell the off-the-air interception and NTRO. That's an interesting story. But let me go with the Blackberry first because it builds on what he's just said. So Blackberry is primarily a device manufacturer, but they also provide the Blackberry service. And the Blackberry service is a little more difficult to intercept for governments because the Blackberry service for individuals encrypts the traffic between the individual and the Blackberry server. So as the traffic passes through the telecom operator cannot tell where that traffic is headed. This is why the Blackberry service is difficult to intercept for individual users. It's even more difficult for enterprise users because while that traffic passes through in an encrypted fashion through the telecom providers, even Blackberry does not have the keys to unencrypt that traffic. The keys to unencrypt that traffic only lies with the enterprises that are using Blackberry at the enterprise level. So this is the problem with intercepting Blackberry traffic. For the last 5 years, Blackberry, since 2008, Blackberry and the Ministry of Home have been having a public punching match. We constantly hear Blackberry complaining that the Ministry of Home is asking them to do things which they don't consider legal, and then we have the Ministry of Home saying that Blackberry is not cooperating with legal interception and legal access requests. So this is the tension. But why does it become interesting, and why does this connect with the NSA story? Why does it connect with an NSA story? Because if an Indian politician is using the Blackberry phone, then the traffic travels in an encrypted fashion over the Indian telecom networks, the internet traffic, over the Indian telecom networks, goes all the way to what is called the Blackberry NOC, or Network Operating Center. Those NOCs may be in Canada, where Blackberry comes from, or maybe in any other part of the world. It goes there, and then we determine where the email should go, or where the Facebook update should go, or where the Twitter status update should go, and then it goes onto the internet from the NOC that is in Canada or some other country. That is how the traffic is being routed. So if the Canadian intelligence agencies want to intercept an Indian politician's phone, the Blackberry traffic from an Indian politician, they can. So you see a very strange phenomena. The Indian intelligence cannot, but the Canadian intelligence can. This is the same prism story. Because all of us use services that are run by multinational corporations, many of them headquartered in the US, and because they are obliged to comply with US law, it is possible for the US government to collect 7.3 billion pieces of information about Indians. And Indians come at the 6th rank in the PRISM scandal. Actually, this piece of infrastructure is called the boundless informant. This is another piece of infrastructure separate from the PRISM infrastructure. So this is an unequal situation. US government can monitor internet behavior of Indian citizens, but Indian intelligence cannot monitor internet behavior of US citizens. Canadian intelligence can intercept Blackberry traffic of an Indian politician or an Indian bureaucrat, but Indian intelligence cannot reciprocally monitor Blackberry traffic of Canadian politicians and Canadian bureaucrats. So now we have confused the picture for you. So far we have told you how it works within a nation state. Within a nation state, often with the cooperation of telcos, and through a legal process, hopefully that works. Sometimes the legal process is not followed, but hopefully through a legal process in a democracy, interception orders are issued. But Indian citizens have no rights under US privacy law, which is why it is completely legal in the US to collect those 7.3 billion pieces of information about Indian citizens. It's not illegal at all. It's a complete legal thing which the US intelligence agencies have done. So we have complicated the story in two ways. One is we've told you that there are multiple jurisdictions involved. These jurisdictions always don't cooperate with each other. And we've also complicated the story by showing you that the network topology, the network, remember, that we drew here yesterday, at various points goes into other countries, and that makes things simpler and easier for intelligence agencies, and it makes things better or worse for ordinary citizens whose privacy might be infringed. So that is, I've combined the Blackberry story with the PRISM story. So that's, yes.
The US you have mentioned like these, all the collection of information by the security agency of US about Indian is legal. So that is again a doubt, because there also they have to follow a process. Either a court order is required,
but only for citizens.
No,
only
even,
for US citizens.
No, even for outsider also. And that is what the Google and Facebook have been telling. They say we are giving them access only when there is a approved order. So that means they just cannot do it online basis 24/7 officially. If they are doing it, then it becomes illegal, because there also the security agencies just cannot do, even for others they cannot.
But what we heard from privacy activists in the US is after 9/11, till 9/11, there were safeguards in place for other citizens.
Yes.
After 9/11, most of those safeguards were dismantled. And from what I understand now, you don't need the court order. You don't need court order to wiretap non-American citizens.
But the Google and Facebook, I've read in the newspaper, they are telling that we are giving them access only when they come with the approved order. So we have not given them unregulated or open access kind of thing. That is what the Google and Facebook have.
Gaurav has some more information.
I think what Satyan is saying is correct.
Okay.
Like if you are the US government asking for any data from any private company, you need a court order. Like I work for a US listed public company.
Okay.
We get any request from anyone, we get it at the technical abuse desk. We send it to our lawyers.
Okay.
Right? No questions asked. Right? Straight goes to the lawyer. They need something legal for us to share any data. So Google, Facebook will receive some legal order from someone. But
is it a court order?
It should be a court order.
Okay.
But non-Americans are not protected by American privacy laws.
Yes. So.
But in order for Google to share data, they'll still need a court order.
Okay.
So it's legally like being on the safe side.
Okay. So
yeah, what Satyan is saying is true. Google and Facebook won't just give out data to anyone that asks for it. It could be misused. So they'll say, give me a legal reason to give it to you, and that legal reason could be anything, right? It is not protected by privacy laws. If you are, it is for non-Americans.
Okay. So I stand corrected. In both cases, there has to be a court order, but in the first case, for American citizens, that court order has to be within the configuration of US privacy law. In the other circumstance, it can be much broader. The request can be for national security or something else much broader, and it is not, so the privacy of non-US citizens is not treated exactly the same as the privacy of US citizens, right?
Depends upon the company. Like Twitter has been saying, we won't give you any data.
Yeah, but Twitter doesn't really have much sensitive data.
Yeah.
Twitter doesn't have much, that's mostly public, except for direct messages.
No, I think something changed. You see, there was a particular US journalist who has written something based on a leak from a thing, and he tried, because the US has very high press protection, First Amendment, things like that. And then this matter, they wanted them to disclose the source. And ultimately, I think the US Supreme Court decided on this issue when it is an issue between security and First Amendment. The security prevails over First Amendment. So I think in the law, also, in the US also, the law has now been settled that security is above privacy.
Okay, over to, thank you for that. Elonnai, the next story, off-the-air interception and the NTRO.
Actually, I'm going to go a little bit more on the Blackberry story.
Okay.
Just quickly to mention, jurisdiction is a huge issue right now when we're looking at lawful interception and lawful access by different countries. Because data, as you saw with the Blackberry story, is flowing through so many different jurisdictions, and we now have the cloud. Law enforcement agencies around the world are quite worried about what kind of access they can have to that data. Now, some solutions that other countries and the government of India have considered is to set up local servers. So one thing that they asked the Blackberry to do, or RIM to do, is to set up a local server in India, which I'm correct, they have done in Mumbai. They've set up a NOC in Mumbai. And this is not only to BlackBerry that the Indian government has asked this. They've asked for India-centric Skype. They've asked for Google to set up local servers. They've asked for Yahoo to set up local servers. Now, interestingly, in the news from the response to the NSA scandal, we also have ISPs asking the Indian government to require these companies to set up local servers as well. And the two reasons are different. So the government wants local servers because they want access to our data. And now the ISPs want local servers because they think the data will be more protected if it's in India and it's not going abroad to America where the NSA can spy on it. So I'm kind of curious, do you guys think that local servers is a solution to both these problems? One, access, and two, protecting Indian data?
Local server, of course, is a good physical protection or solution, but that is, difficult to implement. As you know, it is easier said than done. And this requirement of local server have been there, though it started with Blackberry 4-5 years back, and they are supposed to have done installed a server, as you have mentioned. It is not the full NOC, but it's a server where, but the access to that server also is not fully given actually. And in the Blackberry issue, though for individual, as Sunil mentioned, it is the encryption key is there with the Blackberry, but the other service, that is the enterprise service, for which they need what is called a BS, Blackberry Enterprise Server. The Blackberry Enterprise Server actually is housed in the enterprise itself. It is not with the Blackberry. So that solution is still not there. Even if the Blackberry have set up a server in India and have given the full access to that server to the Indian authorities, still the solution is not full. For individual, yes, but for enterprise. And actually, if you know, as far as Blackberry is concerned, the maximum usage of Blackberry is in the enterprise. The individuals, as you know, are using either iPhone or these Galaxy kind of thing or Nokia. The Blackberry mainly, the majority of the Blackberry users are actually enterprise. And their data is in the Blackberry enterprise server, not in the Blackberry server. So that is there. And it is different than, of course, the Google thing and other. The official mandate by the government is not given to Google or Skype to set up their server. It is just across the table or verbal request or verbal, you can say, threats given. In case of Blackberry, it was actually a written thing, and that is why they had to do something. So government is yet to act on these Google and Skype thing. And ISPs actually, they have taken up this issue even much before these privacy and security issue came. Their case is actually the level playing field. You know, like this Skype and Google, whatever services are provided by these companies, they don't have to pay what is called a revenue share to the government, which is 6%. If I'm an Indian ISP and I provide a voice service, VoIP service to my customer, whatever revenue I collect, I have to pay 6% of that to the government as a license fee or AGR, what they call. Whereas Skype or Google or any Microsoft kind of VoIP service, whatever revenue, if at all, because they say we don't collect any revenue, but maybe somewhere revenue is accruing. So whatever revenue is accruing on that, they don't pay anything to government of India as a license fee because they are not providing it as a Indian service provider. So that is the ISPI case. The case is of level playing field, not of security and privacy.
Okay, so thank you. I think another point of the Blackberry case that I wanted to point out is that the government of India also asked Blackberry to essentially allow access through providing encryption keys. Now, technically, under the under the interception rules in the ITA, service providers are supposed to store their decryption key with the DOT if it is over 40-bit, and the service provider is not allowed to employ bulk encryption. Now, this was a problem because BlackBerry was doing this, and so the government could not decrypt the data. Now, I think perhaps we'll quickly step back and look at the interception regime in India because it's actually quite complicated in my opinion. So you have the Telegraph Act, and that speaks to interception of communications from phone to phone. And in that act, we've talked about the Secretary to the Ministry of Home Affairs, and there's a review committee, and there's also a procedure about how there's a nodal officer where the request goes to, the nodal officer confirms it, and then the interception happens, and then the data has to be destroyed after a certain period of time. So that's the Telegraph Act. Then we have the IT Act, which has interception rules, but within that, there's interception, monitoring, and decrypting. And again, it speaks to the Secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs, but it allows not just interception of communications, but interception, monitoring, and decryption. And it allows it on another ground. So I think there's 7 grounds within the Telegraph Act for which interception can happen, including national security. Now this is expanded in the IT Act and includes the commitment of a cognizable offense, I think, is the extension of it. And then there's also requirements for service providers. So service providers now have to extend all facilities and assistance to the government to help with this interception, monitoring, and decrypting. And in addition to that, the service provider is held liable if they do not assist the government with imprisonment for 7 years. And then in addition to that, we have other rules under the IT Act which allow for the collection of traffic data. Now this authorization does not have to come from the Secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs, but instead the Secretary of the Department of Telecommunications. And it's for broad standards like cyber incidents or offensive messages. So there's 3 different types of interception that's happening across India. And then in addition to that, in Rules Notified in 2011, 43A, it provides the government access to stored sensitive personal information by body corporates to any governmental agency who writes a request. So now we've lost the Secretary of Ministry of Home Affairs, we've moved down to the Secretary of the Department of Telecommunications, and now we have a governmental agency who's writing requests for stored sensitive personal information. So I just wanted to point out that we have seen in some ways a digression across legislation when we're looking at access to both our real-time and our stored data in India. Do you have a case study? I can do another one if you...
So let's look at what we've learned so far. We had one story at the device level, cameras on mobile phones. Then we told you what happens at cyber cafes. A lot of regulation in the IT Act on how cyber cafes should be run. KYC, data retention, design of the physical layout of cyber cafes. Then we had the jeweler story and the story of the Infosys engineer telling you about what can happen at the telecom or ISP level, what happens there. Then we took it up one level and we talked about large-scale systems like PRISM and Brownless Informant and the CMS. So we looked at infrastructure at the national level, which is beyond the telecom operators' remit, beyond the individual ISP's limit. Then we introduced the cross-jurisdictional complexity through the Blackberry case study. So now we go back between the device and the ISP, between the device and the telco, and we introduce you to off-the-air interception technology. Has anybody heard of this before? I know Satyan and Gaurav know what off-the-air. Anybody else? Have you heard of this before? You've heard of off-the-air interception. Do you want to tell us? Okay. So increasingly, given the explosion of free software and commodity hardware that can be purchased, it is possible for one of us to set up or to buy a passive or active cell phone tower. We can make our own cell phone towers. And if such a tower is in a vehicle, and the vehicle is just parked outside this window, then the strength, the signal strength from that tower will be very, very strong. And all of our phones, which are looking constantly for the strongest signal to connect to, will recognize this fake cell phone tower and will then connect to the cell phone tower. This cell phone tower can have the capacity or the ability to identify itself as Vodafone to some users, Airtel to some other users, Reliance to somebody else. So almost all our phones will automatically connect to this cell phone tower. Once our phones connect to that tower, interception can begin. Of course, SMS and call information is a little more easier to understand. With encrypted channels, as Mr. Gupta has pointed out, they have to still figure out how to break into the encryption, or they have to figure out if they can manage to capture the key as the keys are being exchanged, etc. So this is what they have to do. This technology is now used by intelligence agencies across the world. Across the world, intelligence agencies and the ministries of home use this infrastructure. In India, many organizations that are connected to intelligence and also some private organizations bought this equipment. And then the Home Ministry got very upset because they were wondering where this equipment is being used. So there were several occasions when the Home Ministry asked for recall. They said, we want the equipment to be recalled. Some equipment was surrendered, but not everything. So there are still these devices that exist which have been brought in specifically for the purpose of off-the-air interception. And unfortunately, because there are a lot of free software enthusiasts, some people must get Datta from Outlook Express. And if you search for Outlook and NTRO, you can see what these whistleblowers have told us about this equipment. We know about 600 off-the-air interceptors were imported. And what is very strange is a majority, according to the whistleblowers, we don't know if this is 100% true, according to whistleblowers, a majority of these are deployed in South Delhi. That means where the elite and powerful people in India are based. So this is an interesting additional element to the story. So in a society, you can have two types of surveillance. You can have an unequal society, few rich people, elite people on the top, and a lot of poor, powerless people at the bottom. That's a pyramid, classic pyramid. So you can have a society where all the surveillance is targeted at the people at the bottom. This can be one type of society. Or in the NTRO story, we have a different type of surveillance, where a lot of surveillance is targeted at the top. This is called surveillance. The opposite of surveillance is surveillance. I tend to believe that privacy protection should be inversely proportionate to power, and transparency obligations should be directly proportionate to power. So I'm happy to live in a society where the rich and powerful are placed under surveillance. I think that is the right place to place the surveillance infrastructure. I get very worried when the surveillance infrastructure starts pointing to the bottom of the pyramid, to those who are poor and powerless. I don't know whether this was done on purpose, whether NTRO was set up with the explicit mission to surveil upon the powerful in the country, but this is what the whistleblowers tell us. And when I heard this story, I was not horrified. I thought that's very good. Most probably Satyan Gupta goes to South Delhi, and Gaurav also must be going to South Delhi. So they are under surveillance. That is okay. That does not sound as frightening as ordinary people being, if these devices were outside slums and keeping track of what slum dwellers were doing, I'd be a little more worried. I don't worry about Satyan Gupta. He can take care of his rights. Yes.
Like this anti-RO thing.
Yes.
As per the law, they are supposed to do this surveillance to outsider, to non-Indian citizen. It is their mandate.
Yes.
So in South Delhi also, as you know, a lot of embassies are there.
Yes.
So maybe that can be
They're
the
spying
target.
on the embassies.
Maybe.
Okay.
but other thing, over the air interception is also used by private detective agency. Lot of them.
Illegally.
Illegally. It is illegally, it is legal only for foreign nations.
Okay.
Over the air, through anti-RO, you can do if you are a foreign nation. On Indian national, whether it is politician or a businessman, it is illegal if you are doing it on an Indian national. That is one thing. The other thing, of course, I wanted to add about this encryption that Elonnai mentioned about that 40-bit thing. That is correct. Unfortunately, the Blackberry story is different. Actually, Blackberry problem is different. Though they say we don't have the key, which is correct as far as enterprise users are there, for individual, they have the key. But unfortunately, the algorithm used by Blackberry for encryption is what is called dynamic key. Dynamic key means even if you deposit it today with the government, after next second, it has already changed. So whatever you have deposited to the government serves no purpose. It's changing over the air or what on the real-time basis. And that is what BlackBerry key is so strong. Same thing is used by Skype. They don't use any permanent key. It is dynamically changing key. So even if you give it to the government, it serves no purpose. And that is the biggest challenge of intercepting these BlackBerry and Skype. Only solution is you have to have a server or storage in the country so that then you can, on the line, you can keep monitoring it. That is why there is a move towards making them to have their server.
South Delhi is not a lot of embassies. Most of the embassies are in central Delhi, around the Chanakyapur area.
What Sunil mentioned was actually both. He does not know much about the Central and South Delhi are one and the same thing as far as Delhi is concerned. They are both overlapping with each other.
Yes.
No, the thing about your hypothesis about surveillance of the top and the surveillance of the bottom is, the value of the information that you get at the top and the value of the information that you get at the bottom.
Yes.
And the fact is that for a foreign country, surveilling the bottom 90% of the pyramid would be of absolutely no value, because it will be which cinema are you going to, what you going to buy tomatoes, are you going to buy thing. The key thing is to survey the top 3%. And if you look at it as at a national perspective, that is a bigger, a very huge loss to India to permit the surveillance of the top, because policy, everything is made at the top. Decisions are made at the top. Attitudes of political leaders should be known on key international issues. So manipulating a country becomes extremely easy if you survey the top. So I don't know whether you will stick with your...
I agree. Privacy of all citizens is equally important. I was just giving you my personal bias, where I think it causes less harm and where I think you're more likely to uncover some big ticket corruption. Yeah, but if the people are not corrupt, if they are honest, law-abiding citizens, then there is absolutely no reason why their privacy should be infringed upon. And if it is, it should be done in compliance with process, right? So Elonnai will send her slideshow. Slideshow has many of these things organized from the perspective of laws. She will also send you a chapter of our book, which covers the internet. So you will get about 30, 40 pages of written material that will take you through all of this in a little more detail. She will also send you a link to the whole book. And if you're interested in other parts of privacy and e-governance, privacy and health, and privacy and finance, etc., you can read up the other chapters. They're all draft chapters of our book that Elonnai and I are writing together. That book is available on our website, but she will send you the link so it's easier for you to find it. We have 4 more minutes before we bring this session to a close. We can take some questions.
Actually, I was going to...
We're running out.
Oh,
so
okay.
You had one more case study?
No, just a very quick case study, actually. I just wanted to kind of summarize this to say that India is at a very interesting position right now in terms of privacy because, as you can see from the stories that we've told, there's a lot happening that can impact the citizens' privacy. And currently, India is asking the EU for data secure status with the privacy protections that we have within India right now, which is essentially the 43A rules under the IT Act. Now, what's going to come to see if India will actually get data secure status or if a privacy legislation will be enacted, which is more horizontal and encompasses the right to privacy. So I just kind of wanted to close it up and say that a privacy legislation may be coming in India to create safeguards for all these situations.
Very important. So we're working on our privacy legislation. Some quick questions and then we'll try and respond.
You were telling about the Blackberry server it's setting up. The government is requesting that Blackberry is protecting it.
The Blackberry has set up one in Mumbai, but it has not served the purpose.
You want to put this on? You want to put this on?
What?
I think you're leaking. Your chest.
Okay.
By the Blackberry. Though they have set up the server and kept it there, but they are not giving it access fully because again they want that you should get the access after that warrant and other things. So they told it is illegal. They told to the government it is illegal for you to ask me uninterrupted access to this server. Though you have forced me to set up a server in your country, which they have done. And in any case, Blackberry is not a signatory to any of the government license. Government can force only those agencies or those companies which have a license in the country. Blackberry does not have. So it is a goodwill gesture of Blackberry that they agreed with the government. They set up it there. But when government wanted 100% access, they again raised the issue of the legality of the case. And even after that, it will not solve the problem. As I mentioned, the bulk of the Blackberry users are on the enterprise side, for which even Blackberry themselves don't have the storage.
Okay. Then banning the Blackberry usage in India will serve the purpose?
Yeah, but that actually, that is not the solution. It may serve the purpose, but
serve the purpose of the government.
No, but then they will use something else actually. If they don't use Blackberry, they will use, let us say, Skype or something of Google, which have similar problems.
No, it seems to be the scenario has given impression that the Blackberry is above the law.
Yeah. Because they are not Indians. They are not Indian.
Yeah, that's the one.
Registered in India. That is correct also. So they are above the law because they are not Indian. Neither they are registered in India.
So if there are no other questions, I'll just end with 2 other smaller stories which tell us precisely about this problem. When you start to do surveillance on everybody, you can have unintended effects. So in the US, many young people who share copyright material without authorization using peer-to-peer torrent technology, they have been taken to court, right? Many thousands of young people have been served with legal notices in the US. So what has happened in the US as a result? Every young person now knows how to use encryption software. They know how to use circumvention tools. They know how to be anonymous on the internet. They know how to make it more difficult for the government to break through their internet communication and behavior. So NGOs who work in the field of privacy and human rights for the last 15 years have been breaking their head trying to convince young US citizens to become more security conscious. They never listen to the NGOs. But the moment the corporations began to crack down on them, they immediately managed to get organized and learn about all these privacy enhancing technologies. This is bad for the government because now everybody is behaving like a criminal, and even harder for the government to determine who is the real criminal because everybody is using encryption, everybody is using circumvention tools, right? In India, during the exodus of the northeastern people from Karnataka and Mumbai and Pune, the government placed a limit on the number of SMSs you could send every day. And overnight, there was a massive migration to another platform called WhatsApp. And many of those people have not come back from WhatsApp back to SMS. And WhatsApp is again very difficult for the Indian government to intercept. It's not an Indian company, completely encrypted communication channel. Interception of messages that were previously clear through the telco network is now very difficult to intercept through the WhatsApp. So just because you do more surveillance doesn't necessarily mean you're solving the problem. Sometimes it's like an arms race where the consumers and citizens will also will take extreme measures, and then nobody's interest is served. So with that thought, we will leave you. Sorry for eating into 3 minutes of your tea break. Please have tea. Please get an opportunity to speak to Mr. Gupta, Gaurav. These are experts who travel the world, advise the International Telecommunication Union, advise ISPs across the region. Gaurav advises ISPs across the Asia Pacific on how to set up their infrastructure. So please grab this opportunity to speak to them. We also have some Wikipedians. Syed, is that Rahim? Yeah. And Shubhashri, so please speak to her. Yeah, but she's already a participant. Yeah. But some Wikipedians have joined us. So if you'd like to speak about Wikipedia, do speak to them. If anybody needs a class on how cryptography works and how to encrypt your email, etc., then we could offer that class after today, at the end of today. I can explain how cryptography works, how to encrypt your email, how to use anonymization tools on the internet. It's not part of this course, but I can do it after the day is done. Bernadette and I can do that for you. No, I don't know. I don't know how to decrypt. I don't know how to decrypt, so I cannot teach.
Anything except Blackberry.
Thank you. Thank you.